Midterms are coming, have you heard? And earlier this week, the president announced that he'd be spending his birthday with the Executive Council of the nation's largest labor federation, the AFL-CIO. Among the things the president's playing up, new labor protections in a trade deal with South Korea and the filing of a first-of-its-kind labor complaint with trading partner Guatemala. The Senate's managed to approve spending to save state jobs, but unemployment will probably still raise a little with new numbers this week. Will the president who roused such labor support in 2008 be able to do it again for the midterms? To give us his take, GRITtv commentator Bill Fletcher joins us next.
I think around the nation it's really pretty bleak.
The economy is not doing as well as most citizens would like, and so it's kind of hopelessness and scared, not knowing what's going to happen next.
I find that I'm doing more and more for my family with less and less that I have because they have less and less.
I live in the highest unemployment ratio in the United States, Las Vegas, Nevada. It's unfortunate how the situation has occurred with these big bankers capitalizing on the U.S. government as well as all the other employees within the United States, wherein they robbed us.
When we've got corporations engaging in commerce overseas and not here, taking jobs away from Americans and taking them overseas because it's better for the bottom line, the profit of the company, okay? We have to start thinking about Americans and what's best for them and not what's best for the company.
Well, there are some voices from the jobs front prepared in that video by the AFL earlier this summer. Bill, glad to have you back on the program. Always good to see you. Talk a little bit about the president's meeting with the executive board of the AFL this week. Do you think this sort of trade talk will overcome the frustration people like that, about what's happening on the jobs front?
Well, it's good to be back on the program, Laura. I don't think it's going to be enough. I've been thinking that Obama needs to take a page from Franklin Roosevelt's book. Roosevelt, when he was facing obstruction from the Republicans and right-wing Democrats, talked about the economic Royalists that ran this country. And he really tapped into an anger that the public felt. I think that we need Obama around this country talking about the obstructions that are going on in Congress, talking about the people that are blocking these various job bills. And I think he also needs to situate himself among working people. And I don't mean just showing up at AFL-CIO Executive Council meetings. I mean, being out there in the trenches with workers and talking with them.
But what's he going to do? I mean, the stimulus bill is more or less spent out. You've got no chance of new stimulus spending, it seems to me, before November. Robert Reich, former Labor Secretary, wrote this week, the activist phase of this administration is over. What can they do concretely to help these folks who are feeling that their lives haven't improved and are maybe a little foggy about who's to blame for it?
I don't think that Reich is wrong exactly. Let me put it like this. That yes, it is unlikely that a stimulus bill will be passed between now and November. But if we want something passed ever, there has to be a gearing up of forces and energy. And the problem that we get from this administration is that they're too quick to back down, Laura. They don't fight until the absolute end. When they're running up against an obstacle, they're first prepared to make premature compromises, and then they just slow things up. What I think that the union leaders and more importantly the members need to hear from Obama is that he will be with them in fighting. That's what they need to hear. They need to also have a very frank discussion with him about what happened to the Employee Free Choice Act. I mean, and obviously, as I think you and I have discussed before, part of the blame lies with the union leaders themselves for having viewed this as simply a lobbying effort. But I think that President Obama has some accounting to do as to why this thing got dropped and what needs to be done now. So I think that there's a lot that he has to say.
There are some new leaders, of course, on the block, and one is Mary Kay Henry over at the SCIU. Let's hear from her on a planned demonstration this October, which maybe is an attempt to do exactly what you're saying. Take a look.
On October 2nd, 2010, SEIU will join again with NCLR and so many of our labor and civil rights partners for a historic march to stand up to the corporate interests and right-wing politicians who wish to take our country backwards. Our One Nation event will take place in multiple cities around this country, and it's about putting America back to work and bringing America back together.
Is that the kind of mobilization you were hoping for?
Oh, absolutely. But you know, the thing I think, Laura, and I absolutely support this march, is that we should have been marching in October 2009, and in fact should have been marching in October 2008. And the problem that we face right now, and this is a very serious issue, is that the failure of not just the unions, but many other organizations to mobilize earlier on has led to a situation where many rank and file activists are dispirited. So I absolutely think that October 2nd is the right thing to do, but it shouldn't be an endpoint. Yes, it should encourage people to come forward and vote in November, but I think, you know, that we have to be thinking about ongoing protests. We have to be in the streets. October 2nd is the right thing.
It'd be a big question whether Barack Obama is there October 2nd, right?
I think that it is a big question, but he will be watching, as will the rest of this country. And if we fail to turn out forces the way that we need to, and if we fail to make it clear that this is not an Obama rah-rah rally, that this is a rally that says we've got to put people back to work, that this administration and this Congress and whatever Congress gets elected in November have an obligation to the people of this country, and that we will keep pressing, and that our pressing will not end when the election is over.
In a contrast to the sort of attention given to some of these questions in our money media, a whole lot of attention continues to go to sort of things like the debate over the mosque in New York. We've only got about a minute left, but is that an important story? Is that a New York story only? What are you making of how that is taking over the headlines?
I think that the mosque story is a national story, because what it's about is right-wing manipulation, and it's about intolerance. You know, Laura, no one asked the question of whether churches could be built after the Oklahoma City bombing, despite the fact that the terrorists that carried it out saw themselves as Christian soldiers. No one has asked the question after black people have been lynched and crosses have been burning about whether churches could be constructed somewhere. But now in this context where there's an attempt to promote tolerance, you have these right-wing nuts that are basically saying that this is insensitive. This is a play to people's fear, and it's glorifying ignorance, Laura. That's why we need to speak up when this happens.
All right. Bill Fletcher, thanks so much for joining us. You can see Bill regularly here on GRITtv if you want to find his book, Solidarity Divided. Take a look at our website, grittv.org. We've got a whole lot more on the mosque and more coming up.